Welcome back. In a moment, we'll look at the growing problem of e-waste. But first, here are some other stories to keep an eye on. Federal authorities in America investigating a series of explosive devices discovered in New Jersey. This comes as 29 people were injured after a bomb exploded in a New York City neighborhood. 5 people are being questioned by police. Local elections in Berlin have delivered yet another major defeat for Angela Merkel's ruling party. Voters handed the anti-immigrant Alternative for Germany party their first seat in the state parliament. Merkel's policy on migration has seen her popularity rapidly decline in recent months. Indonesian forest fires may have caused more than 100,000 premature deaths. The figure dwarfs the government's official toll of 19. Fires are deliberately sparked between the months of July and October to clear vast areas of land for plantations. Now, have you ever wondered what happens to your electronic gadgets when you ditch them for the next, more exciting model? These are expensive devices, they have valuable components, and they can also contain dangerous substances. Recycling, so-called e-waste, is a growing industry, but critics say not everything ends up where it should. Insight's Ty Genwright reports.
It's that time in the tech cycle again when gadget geeks go into overdrive. Masters of the art, Apple has launched a new range of expensive toys. And logic would suggest every time a new phone is born, an old one is no longer needed.
Crowds, queues, excitement like this has been replicated in cities all over the world. The question is, what will these guys do with their old ones?
I'm really embarrassed to show you because my iPhone is in a horrible state.
So what are you going to do with that one?
I just don't. Because, I don't know, my phone has been through everything, so I'm pretty sure I'm just going to leave it in a box.
I've definitely sent an old one off to like a gift gaff or something where they like sent me a £20 voucher or something in return.
So it's important to recycle them.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think they do very well being put in a bin anyways.
Do you trust the recycling process?
I can't say I've investigated it in that much detail to really have a strong opinion of whether or not I trust it or not. I kind of assume that people are doing what they say, so I hope that's the case.
From old phones to computers, televisions and their remote controls, around 50 million tonnes of so-called e-waste is created every year. The UN estimates that 6.5 million tonnes gets recycled, but almost 42 million is simply dumped. The discarded gadgets contain gold, silver, iron and copper, worth an estimated $52 billion, so it's a missed opportunity for profit as well as a threat to the environment.
It's a throwaway society. Something breaks, you don't repair it anymore, you go and buy something new.
When it's done right, there is money to be made from taking apart unwanted electricals.
The IT equipment comes in, it gets broken down into all its component parts. So right here you've got your chassis, which are mainly made of steel. Then you've got things like power supplies, aluminium heat sinks, motherboards, and of course CPUs, which are obviously most valuable.
Because?
It's gold.
Gold. So what would some of this be worth?
Could be up to £36,000 a tonne.
Wow.
There's pretty much a market for everything. Anything from your computer and all the bits and pieces that are inside of it, there's a raw material value to all this stuff. Plastics, go back into toys, metals, anything with a plug or battery. Around about 98% is our recycling rate, but everything can be recycled.
Recycling old gadgets is now an industry across the world. Businesses booming in the Chinese town of Guyu, China's capital for e-waste. It is clearly a lucrative industry, but with an environmental and human cost. Local waterways are littered with worthless components, and the air and water supply have become so contaminated that many children have been shown to have high levels of lead in their bloodstream.
Why is e-waste dumping still a problem when so much of this material has got value?
Well, because e-waste is not only valuable, or most of it is valuable, but also it contains hazardous substances. So what happens is that criminals basically steal or scavenge the end-of-life appliances, take out the valuable stuff, and they dump the invaluable part.
Have regulators got a grip on this problem? Are they trying hard enough?
They are trying, but of course it's a complex issue. It's also a question of enforcing the regulations that you put in place. We often see organized crime groups operating, and when the issue gets too tough in one country, they move to another country.
Some gadgets keep their value more than most. Many of those buying the latest iPhone will get a nice payout for recycling their old one. But whatever the value of your e-waste, it doesn't change the need to dispose of it properly. Ty Genwright, reporting for Insight.
Well, to discuss that further, I'm joined via Skype in Berlin by Dr. Kurt Rödiger, who is the head of the Sustainable Cycles Programme at the United Nations University. And also with us in the studio is Darren Taylor from the organisation Computer Aid International. Thanks for being with us, Darren. Kurt Rödiger, how does the world get better at e-recycling?
Well, it has improved over the last years. At least the e-waste issue has moved onto the agenda of policymakers, of governments, and also industry around the globe. But despite this fact, the number is tremendously increasing. We are expecting to hit the 15 million production of e-waste in the year 2017 already. And this is an increase from 42 million tons we are producing these days on an annual basis. So that means in practice it's on the political agenda, but still a lot to be done here from a technological point of view, but also awareness rising, because most consumers are simply not yet aware that they have to dispose of their outdated gadgets separately so that it can go into recycling.
There's no imperative, though, is there? Because there's no persuasive economic argument to say this must be done. It's nice if it is done, but it doesn't have to be done.
Well, there is an economic argument in behind, and this is related to the resources we are using. If we are looking to our smartphones only, for example, half of what you can find on the periodic table is used in the smartphones. And we are using it only probably for 1 year. So when it's finally then disposed of and only landfilled or incinerated, it's a waste of resources. And these resources are very important to keep the production chains also running. So this is definitely also an economic incentive in behind to remain access to these resources important for keeping the production going.
Darren Taylor, tell us what Computer Aid tries to do.
So what we try to do, we try and link up with large companies and individuals who may have computers that are redundant to themselves. They could be 3 years old or 5 years old. We will take that, data wipe it, which is quite a large, important part of a company's Data Protection Act, refurbish that computer, and then find organisations and non-for-profit organisations around the world to distribute them computers.
There is a second-hand market for these things?
Definitely, definitely. What we find, companies may change their computers over 2 to 3 years, mainly maximum 5 years. But for them, it may be redundant, but for somebody else, it's brand new kit once we've refurbished it. So as I like to say, another man's junk is another man's treasure.
And then what sort of life cycle do they have at their second destination?
Well, they can have, depending on the quality of the equipment that we receive, can have up to 5 to 8 years extra life on top of that kit. Now, once it's come to the end of that life, we try to make sure that we work with organisations either in Africa or in South America to make sure that that 0% goes to landfill once it's finished its life in that specific country.
You aim for 0% in landfill.
We aim for 0% in landfill.
You're then even taking on an even bigger challenge of really outdated kit, 10, 15 years old.
Exactly.
And then what do? You try and get it recycled?
Well, we work with companies called Tessam in the UK, and there's one in Kenya called CSKF. I've not got the terminology right correctly, but they make sure that they strip everything down and 0% goes to landfill. So it's trying to maximise the lifespan of the kit, but also making sure that 0% goes to landfill.
Now, is this economically sound, or is this a charitable activity that you're doing at the moment?
Well, we do it charitably-wise, but also it's good for large companies to say that we're giving our kit and we're not throwing it to landfill, we're making sure it gets an extra life, and it's obviously it's benefiting people on the ground. So that's our selling point.
Kurt Rödiger, that's the point, I suppose, isn't it? You have to make this politically acceptable, socially acceptable to be a good thing to do, so that people either don't change their equipment more often, or if they do change it, they make sure that their old equipment has a second use.
Absolutely. This is the biggest issue we are facing in here, because most of the gadgets are simply not entering a second life phase or even a third life phase, either in the developing world or in our industry already, or in our society. So here incentives are definitely at stake, and here a much more awareness rising is also at stake, because we realize that technologically a lot is possible also when it comes to recycling, but the consumer's awareness is still very much limited.
Kurt Rödiger, Darren Taylor, thank you both very much. Now we end with our Insight Bite. This is a little something that we feel you should know about, and this time it's the largest lifting structure in the world. An elevator that can carry ships weighing an impressive 3,000 tons. The ship elevator will cut journey times for passenger, cruise and small cargo ships from over 3 hours to about 40 minutes. Passing through the Three Gorges Dam in China's Hubei province will be as easy as jumping in your car. The machine was designed by a team consisting of Germans and Chinese, and itself weighs over 15,000 tons. That's all for now. I'm Martin Stanford. That was Insight.